The landscape of Britain is shrouded in myths and legends. But the oldest, oddest, most arcane of all those myths is the myth of Brutus of Troy. Did you know, for instance, that here in the heart of the city of London, on Ludgate Hill, where St. Paul's Cathedral now stands, there was said to have been a great stone circle built by Brutus of Troy to worship the goddess Diana? And did you know that in the heart of the city of London, opposite Cannon Street railway station, is the mysterious London Stone just behind this grille here? This stone was said to have been brought to Britain by Brutus of Troy, and it originally came from Troy itself. Did you know that London's Guildhall is supposed to stand on the site of Brutus of Troy's palace?
But who was this most mysterious of British mythological characters? And how ever did his story come about?
Brutus's myth was developed in Britain about 1,500 years ago as an extension of a much older Roman myth about Aeneas.
The hero who survived the fall of Troy about 1.5 millennium earlier and travelled to Italy, where he laid the foundations of the Roman Empire. Brutus's story was then expanded and immortalized in 1135 by Geoffrey of Monmouth in his History of the Kings of Britain, the book that also introduced the story of King Arthur as one of Brutus's successors. Geoffrey imagined that Brutus was a great-grandson of Aeneas and asserted that he was born here at Alba Longa near what is now Rome, but was then the capital of the Trojans' kingdom in Italy.
When he was a young man, Brutus was out hunting in the woods near Alba Longa when he accidentally shot his father with an arrow and killed him. And for that, he was exiled.
Brutus wandered east, and at Butrotum, in what is now Albania, he found many descendants of the Trojans living in slavery under an evil Greek king called Pandrasus. Brutus inspired the Trojans to rebel, and they finally defeated the Greeks at a castle just to the south in Epirus. Based on Geoffrey's description of the castle, I think that it was this ancient Greek citadel in Epirus, called Tricastro. Brutus and his people sailed away to the island of Lefkada, where he had a prophetic dream in which the goddess Diana promised him a new home, far in the west, Brutus, in the wide ocean. Their adventures took them right across the Mediterranean and through the Pillars of Hercules, that we now call the Straits of Gibraltar. On the coast of Spain they met more Trojans, led by a Herculean hero called Coroneus. I think that their meeting took place at A Coruña, on the northwest coast of Spain, where the Tower of Hercules stands to this very day. They sailed up the coast of France and along the river Loire, fighting a bitter war with the Gauls, and founding, so Geoffrey of Monmouth claims, the French city of Tours. At last the Trojan fleet reached the Isle of Albion, which was renamed Britain after Brutus. Geoffrey says that they came ashore at Totnes in Devon, and the town still boasts the Brutus stone, onto which Brutus is said to have stepped when he first came ashore. Britain was uninhabited except for a tribe of giants, whom Brutus and Coroneus had to fight in order to gain control of Britain. Their leader was Gog-Magog, whom Coroneus eventually slew, hurling him from the cliffs, which are said to be stained with his blood to this very day. Brutus then travelled across Britain. Later stories imagine him founding Lincoln, laying the foundations of Oxford University, and being crowned King of Britain on Silbury Hill in Wiltshire, or, nearby, in the great stone circle of Avebury.
Brutus went on to found a city that he called Trinovantum, the new Troy in the west. That's the city that we now call London.
Over the centuries, writers including Chaucer, Shakespeare, and Alexander Pope have been inspired to add their own elements to Brutus's story, until we reach Dover Harbour.
In the year 1800, the Reverend John Ogilvy wrote a new epic poem about Brutus called Britannia. He imagined Brutus and his Trojans landing down there in Dover and establishing his first ever base in Britain up on that hill where Dover Castle stands now. These are some of the banks, and behind me, one of the gates of Bigbury Iron Age hill fort near Canterbury in Kent. Now, Ogilvy imagined that the giants Brutus had to battle in order to gain control of Britain lived in a great hill fort somewhere near Dover. And based on his description, I think that that was right here at Bigbury, near Canterbury. Over the centuries, the great giant Gog Magog, who Brutus and his men had to fight, became split into two different giants, Gog and Magog. And there's an 18th century myth that Brutus captured them and made them gatekeepers of his palace at Guildhall in London. Well, they live there to this very day, and they come out once a year to lead the Lord Mayor's show. And here they are, waiting to lead the 800th anniversary of the Lord Mayor's show. The great giants, Gog and Magog, the arch enemies of Brutus. And here come the giants Gog and Magog, leading the Lord Mayor's show. When Brutus died, he was buried in London, the city that he had founded. A 19th century version of his myth says that his burial place was right there, underneath the White Tower of the Tower of London.
But his myth lives on to this very day, and so it should, because in mythological terms, Brutus of Troy is the ancestor of us all.
I'm Anthony Adolph, a professional genealogist, and I've been so fascinated by the myth of Brutus of Troy that I've spent the last 10 years writing this book, Brutus of Troy and the Quest for the Ancestry of the British, which is published by Pen and Sword and available in all good bookshops and, of course, on Amazon. Well, I do hope you've enjoyed watching this little film and that you will enjoy reading the epic story of the great mythological founder of Britain, Brutus of Troy.